Someone says something kind about you, a genuine compliment, not flattery, not politeness, something specific, something that shows they actually saw you. And instead of warmth, there's something else, a tightening, a subtle urge to deflect. Oh, it was nothing. You're being too kind. Anyone would have done the same. Or maybe you go quiet, smile in a way that closes the moment down before it can go any further. Sometimes it's more physical than that, a heat in the face, a sudden awareness of your own body, an impulse to look away, to make yourself smaller, to change the subject quickly. And the strange part, the part that's hard to explain, is that the attention was positive. Nobody criticized you. Nobody challenged you. Someone looked at you and saw something good, and your system responded as if something dangerous had just happened. This is one of the most quietly confusing experiences a person can have because it doesn't fit the story most people tell about what they want from others. We want to be seen. We want to be appreciated. We want to feel like the people around us actually notice us, really notice us, not just the surface version we offer them. And yet, the moment it happens, the moment someone actually looks and sees something real, the system recoils. Most people interpret this as shyness, as modesty, as social anxiety, as some version of, I'm not good at taking compliments. These are not wrong descriptions of the behavior, but they don't explain the mechanism underneath it. Because here's what's actually happening when positive attention triggers discomfort. The nervous system is not evaluating the content of what was said. It's evaluating the fact of being seen. And for a system that learned, somewhere, at some point, that visibility is the same thing as vulnerability. Being seen is never just being seen. It's being exposed. Think about what visibility actually meant in the environments where most of these patterns were formed. Not the adult environments we live in now, the earlier ones. The ones where being noticed could mean being singled out. Where standing out from the group carried social risk. Where being seen by the wrong person at the wrong moment had real consequences. Or the more personal ones, where being visible meant being evaluated. Where attention from an important person came with conditions, with performance expectations, with the possibility of being found lacking. Where being seen was never neutral, it was always the beginning of something, and you learned over time to read being seen as the first beat of a sequence you needed to be ready for, not because you decided to, not as a conscious strategy, but because the nervous system is very good at learning sequences, at associating what comes first with what tends to follow. And if what followed visibility, consistently, repeatedly, in the environments that mattered most, was evaluation, criticism, conditional approval, or the sudden loss of safety, then the nervous system made a prediction it still makes now. Every time someone looks at you with genuine attention, every time a compliment lands with too much accuracy, every time someone gets close enough to really see you, the prediction activates, something is about to happen. Get ready. This prediction has a name in the research. It has a neurological signature. It has a developmental origin that's been mapped in detail. And understanding it, not just recognizing that it happens, but understanding why the system built it and what it's been protecting you from, changes something in the relationship to it. Not overnight, not completely, but the discomfort that felt like a flaw starts to look like what it actually is, a learned response to a real experience, running in a context where it no longer applies but hasn't been told yet that the context changed. That's where we're going in this video. And it starts with something almost nobody connects to compliments and attention. A response in the brain that was designed for physical exposure, for the moment a predator could see you clearly. And what happened when it got applied to the much more complex terrain of being seen by the people we needed most? To understand why being seen can feel like being exposed, we need to start with a distinction that the nervous system doesn't naturally make, but that changes everything once you can see it clearly. The distinction between visibility and vulnerability. In the physical world, the world our nervous systems evolved in, these two things were genuinely connected. To be visible was to be detectable. To be detectable was to be targetable. The animal that stood out from the herd, the one that moved differently, looked different, made noise when others were silent, was the one most likely to be selected as a threat or as prey. Visibility, in that context, was physiologically dangerous. The nervous system developed a response to it, a specific alerting signal that activates whenever an organism becomes suddenly visible, suddenly exposed, suddenly the object of focused attention. Researchers call this the exposure response. And in humans, this response is mediated primarily through two interconnected systems. The first is the amygdala, the threat detection center, which activates when attention is directed toward the self, especially unexpected or evaluative attention. The second is what researchers like Joseph Ledoux and others have called the social evaluation circuit, a network involving the medial prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate, and the insula, that processes how we are being perceived by others and generates a predictive threat signal when that perception feels uncertain or risky. These two systems together produce what most people experience as the discomfort of being seen. But here's where it gets specifically interesting. This exposure response is not calibrated to content. It doesn't distinguish between being seen negatively and being seen positively. It responds to the fact of focused attention itself, and to the uncertainty of what that attention means. Which is why a compliment can activate the same system as criticism, not because the brain processes them as equivalent, but because the first beat, being the object of focused attention, is the same in both cases. And for a nervous system that learned to read that first beat as the beginning of something unpredictable, the content of what follows is almost irrelevant to the initial activation. The system fires first. Then, later, if the cortex catches up, you register that it was actually something kind, but the activation already happened. The pull to deflect, to minimize, to look away, is already in motion. Now, layered on top of this physiological response is something more specifically learned, something that researchers in developmental psychology and interpersonal neurobiology call the shame response. Shame, in the clinical research sense, is distinct from guilt. Guilt is about behavior. I did something wrong. Shame is about identity. There is something wrong with me. And the shame response has a very specific developmental signature. It tends to develop in environments where visibility was regularly followed by negative evaluation, where being seen by a parent, a caregiver, a peer group, an authority figure, meant being assessed, found lacking, corrected, dismissed, or humiliated. In these environments, the child's nervous system makes a very logical association. Being seen, the moment before something hurts, and it learns to protect against that moment by preemptively minimizing visibility. Don't stand out. Don't be noticed. Don't let anyone look too closely. This is not a decision. This is a survival adaptation, as automatic and as below conscious as pulling a hand away from heat. And the research, particularly from the work of Brené Brown, whose foundational studies on shame and vulnerability have been replicated across demographics, shows that this response doesn't stay contained to the environments where it was learned. It generalizes to any situation where attention is received, to any moment where someone looks with genuine focus, to any experience of being seen accurately, which is, paradoxically, the most activating of all, because being seen accurately means there's nowhere to hide. And a system that learned that hiding was safety experiences accurate visibility as the most exposed it can possibly be. If this is landing somewhere specific for you, if you're recognizing this pattern in your own experience of receiving attention, care, or compliments, consider subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with someone who might need to hear this explained this way. Not as a character flaw, not as something to overcome by pushing through, but as a learned response with a clear origin and a mechanism that can actually change, once you can see it clearly enough. There's a third layer to this, and it's the one that explains something most people find genuinely puzzling about this pattern. Why it gets stronger, not weaker, the more someone genuinely cares about you. Why a stranger's compliment is easier to receive than a close person's. Why being truly known by someone you love can feel more exposing than being mildly acknowledged by someone you'll never see again. This is not irony. It's a predictable output of a very specific system, one that calculates risk not just based on attention, but based on how much the source of that attention actually matters to you. And understanding that calculation is where the deepest part of this pattern lives. Let's pause here for a moment. We've covered a lot of ground, and before we go deeper, I want to ask you something directly. Think of the person in your life whose opinion matters most to you. A partner, a parent, a close friend, someone whose care for you is not in question. Now imagine them looking at you, really looking, and saying something genuinely kind, something true about who you are. How does that land? For many people listening to this, the answer is harder than it should, harder than a compliment from someone neutral, harder than praise from a stranger. The more the person matters, the more their perception of you carries weight, the more exposing their positive attention feels. Hold that, because what we're about to go into explains exactly why. The mechanism behind this paradox comes from attachment research, specifically from the work of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, foundational researchers in developmental psychology, and from more recent neuroscientific extensions of their work by researchers like Alan Shaw and Louis Cozolino. Attachment theory, at its core, describes how the nervous system learns to regulate itself in the context of close relationships, and how those early patterns persist as templates for all future close relationships. But here's the piece that's most relevant to what we're exploring. In early attachment relationships, the relationships that shaped the nervous system's baseline, visibility and evaluation were inseparable. The caregiver sees the child, and in that seeing, the child receives information about who they are and whether they are acceptable. Psychologists call this the mirroring function, the process by which the child's sense of self is built partly through being reflected back by the people who matter most. When mirroring is warm, consistent, and attuned, when being seen tends to be followed by acceptance and resonance, the child learns that visibility is safe. That being looked at closely by someone who matters is not threatening but nourishing. But when mirroring is inconsistent, critical, or conditional, when being seen tends to be followed by evaluation, correction, disappointment, or emotional withdrawal, the child learns something different. That being looked at closely by someone who matters is exactly when things get unpredictable. And this is the precise origin of why positive attention from people who matter activates more discomfort than from people who don't. It's not irrational. It's the nervous system applying its most important template. The people who matter most are the ones whose attention has historically been least safe to receive. Not because they intended harm, not always because they caused it in obvious ways, but because when the stakes are highest, when the person's perception of you can actually affect your felt sense of safety and belonging, the exposure response has the most to protect against. There's a concept in attachment research called the approach avoidance conflict. It describes what happens when the same object simultaneously attracts and repels, when something is both deeply wanted and deeply threatening at the same time. For people with this pattern, close relationships often carry exactly this dynamic: the desire for genuine connection, to be known, seen, valued, pulls toward intimacy, and the threat response, built from experiences where visibility was followed by evaluation, pulls away from exactly the closeness that would provide it. This creates an internal conflict that can feel, from the inside, like emotional inconsistency. I want this, and then, when I get it, something in me recoils. The research on disorganized attachment, developed primarily by Mary Main and Eric Hesse, describes this as a system without a stable strategy. Not avoidant, which is consistent distance. Not anxious, which is consistent pursuit, but a system that moves toward and away almost simultaneously, because the source of safety is also the source of the greatest perceived risk. And here's the crucial piece for what we're exploring today. This conflict, this simultaneous pull toward and away from being seen, is not a sign that something is wrong with your capacity for connection. It's a sign that the nervous system learned to pair two things that were genuinely paired in the environments that mattered most: closeness and risk, visibility and consequence, being seen and what followed. And it's been keeping you safe from that pairing ever since. Even in rooms where the pairing no longer exists, even with people who genuinely have no intention of following their attention with evaluation. The system is protecting you from a danger that is no longer present, in a form it can no longer accurately recognize as absent. So let's bring this together. You receive a compliment. Someone sees you clearly and says so. Someone offers care, attention, genuine positive regard, and something in you flinches, not because you don't want it, not because you're fundamentally close to connection, not because you're bad at accepting compliments or too independent or emotionally unavailable, because your nervous system made a very specific prediction, built from very specific experiences, that this moment, the moment of being seen, is the moment before something happens, and it fires that prediction automatically, below the level of choice, before the rational mind has time to read the context and recognize that the danger isn't there. Here's what the nervous system was actually protecting. When visibility was reliably followed by evaluation, when being seen by someone who mattered meant being assessed, found lacking, or suddenly less safe, the system built a protection. Minimize exposure before the evaluation arrives. Deflect the compliment before it can be followed by something that hurts. Look away before the attention can shift from positive to critical. Make yourself smaller before someone decides you don't deserve the space you took up. This is not weakness. This is intelligence. Intelligence that was forged in real conditions, doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is not the protection. The problem is that the protection cannot tell the difference between then and now, between the environments where visibility was genuinely risky and the ones where it isn't, between the people whose attention came with conditions and the people whose attention is genuinely safe. The system fires the same response because the first beat is the same. Someone is looking, and it doesn't wait for the second beat to find out what kind of looking it is. What begins to change this, and the research on this is consistent, is not positive thinking. It's not deciding to receive compliments more gracefully. It's not willpower applied to the moment of recoil. What changes it is accumulated experience of the second beat being different, of being seen and nothing dangerous following, of being visible and the attention staying warm, of being known accurately and remaining safe anyway. This is what attachment researchers call earned security, the development in adulthood of a revised internal model, not from a single transformative experience, but from repeated, accumulated experiences of safety following exposure. It's slow. It's non-linear. It doesn't feel like progress most of the time, because the moments that build it are small. A compliment held for a second longer before deflecting, a piece of genuine care received without immediately minimizing, a moment of being seen clearly and staying present in it rather than looking away. None of these feel like healing, but at the level of the nervous system, at the level of prediction and pattern, they are exactly that. Each moment of safe exposure is a data point the system didn't have before, and enough data points over enough time begin to update the prediction. Not erase it, update it. The response becomes less automatic. The window before the recoil grows slightly longer, and in that window, there's a moment of choice that wasn't there before. Let's go through the concepts from this video one final time, because this one had several layers that are worth holding clearly. The exposure response is a physiological alerting signal mediated through the amygdala and social evaluation circuits that activates when focused attention is directed toward the self. It is not calibrated to the content of the attention. It responds to the fact of being seen and to the uncertainty of what that seeing means. Social hypervigilance is the ongoing below-conscious monitoring of how one is being perceived by others, a pattern that develops when visibility was reliably associated with evaluation, criticism, or conditional safety. The shame response, distinct from guilt, is an identity-level threat signal built in environments where being seen was regularly followed by being found lacking. It generates a preemptive minimizing of visibility as a protective strategy. The mirroring function describes the early relational process through which the child's sense of self is built through being reflected back by caregivers. When mirroring is conditional or evaluative, the child learns to associate visibility with risk. The approach avoidance conflict describes the internal tension of simultaneously wanting and fearing close connection. when the source of safety is also the perceived source of greatest exposure. Earned security is the gradual revision of the internal model through accumulated experience of safety following exposure that allows the system to update its prediction from being seen is dangerous to being seen, in this context by this person, is survivable, and sometimes even good. There's something that follows from all of this that we haven't touched yet. Because everything in this video assumes that the discomfort of being seen is mostly about what other people see when they look at you. But for a lot of people, the harder version of this isn't being seen by others. It's what happens when they turn that same quality of attention inward. When they look at themselves, at a moment of ease, of comfort, of something going right, and instead of recognition, instead of warmth, what rises is something that sounds like, "You don't deserve to feel this good." Why moments of genuine well-being can activate guilt rather than gratitude, and where that response comes from, is exactly what we're going to explore next. Because the system that learned that visibility is dangerous also learned something about joy. And that lesson is one of the quietest and most costly things the nervous system ever carries.